AITA for revealing my wife's separation plan when she expected me to keep paying? I'm Charlie, 42, and by the time my wife Brooke called it space, we had been married for 12 years. We had the kind of life where our names were on the same mortgage, the same car insurance, and the same little notes stuck to the fridge about trash pickup and which garage keypad button needed to be pressed 2 times. We had routines that survived even after warmth started disappearing. I still bought the cereal she liked even though she barely ate breakfast with me anymore. She still moved my keys from the kitchen counter to the hook by the garage door because, according to her, that's where normal adults put them. For a long time, I thought that meant we were just going through a bad season. I was wrong. Our marriage had been strained for almost a year before the separation agreement landed on my phone like a calendar invite. Not dead, at least not in my mind. Just tight and quiet. Dinner had become 2 people chewing carefully around everything they were not saying. Brooke would sit across from me with her phone face down beside her plate, like a tiny black wall. If it buzzed, she would glance at it, smile before she could stop herself, then look irritated if I noticed. The first time I asked, "Everything okay?" she said, "Can I have one thing that's private, Charlie?" That sounded reasonable enough that I let it shame me into backing off. That was the pattern. I would ask a basic question, and she would answer the question she wanted me to have asked. "What time do you think you'll be home?" A mature partner doesn't need to track every move I make. "Did you change the streaming password?" It's really uncomfortable how you frame privacy as suspicious. "Why did you block off Saturday afternoon on the shared calendar?" I need space to feel emotionally safe. I knew some of those words came from real places. I knew couples did need space. I knew privacy mattered. I knew I wasn't entitled to every thought in her head or every second of her day. That was exactly why it worked on me. Brooke didn't come at me sounding reckless or cruel. She sounded calm, wounded, and disappointed, like I was failing a test decent husbands passed without needing instructions. So I started taking smaller steps. I suggested counseling. I suggested Sunday morning coffee without phones. I suggested we each write down what we needed so we didn't keep turning conversations into arguments. Brooke looked at me across the kitchen table one night, both hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't taken one sip from, and said, "Counseling only works if both people can be honest. I can't be honest while you're interrogating me." "I'm not interrogating you," I said. "I'm asking for a marriage where basic questions aren't treated like crimes." Her mouth tightened. "That tone right there. That's why I need space." And I backed down again. That's the part I'm not proud of. I mistook my silence for patience. I told myself I was being respectful, when really I was trying so hard not to be the villain in her story that I stopped checking whether her story made sense. The name Adrian started appearing around the edges before I understood what it meant. At first, he was just someone from a group Brooke had joined. Then he was a friend who actually listens. Then he was a name attached to things that didn't fit. A rideshare receipt in an email folder we both still had access to from a night she told me she stayed alone to clear her head. A calendar block labeled Solo Reset that lined up with a resort deposit on a card I paid. A casual mention of him knowing the brand of wine she liked, even though she corrected me on that same brand 3 weeks earlier like I was a stranger. When I asked who Adrian was, Brooke didn't deny knowing him. She just narrowed her eyes and said, "He understands what it's like to be around someone who shuts down." And I'm supposed to pretend that sentence is normal? I asked. She gave a soft, humorless laugh. "This is exactly why I can't be honest with you." I remember standing there with my hand on the refrigerator door, the cold air hitting my legs, trying to figure out how asking who another man was had become proof that I was unsafe. She walked past me into the hallway and shut the bedroom door, not hard enough to be a slam, but hard enough to make a point. A few days later, Paige texted me. Paige was a mutual friend. Not my best friend, not hers exactly, but the kind of person who had been at enough birthdays and holiday drop-ins that her opinion carried weight in both directions. She was careful, generally kind, and not someone who liked drama. Her text said, "Hey Charlie, I don't want to overstep. I just hope you'll let Brooke breathe a little. She's been really scared about how money and the house are going to become weapons." I stared at that message for a full minute before answering. "Who told you money was on the table?" 3 gray dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. She said you two were talking about separating. I only know what she told me. That was the first real shift in my chest. Not a dramatic explosion. More like a floorboard giving way under a rug. Brooke and I had not talked about separating. She had talked about space, healing, privacy, and emotional safety. She had never said, "I'm planning to tell our friends you might financially trap me." I called my younger sister Leah that night. Leah is blunt in the way people call rude when they can't argue with the accuracy. She listened without interrupting while I told her about Paige, the calendar blocks, the receipts, the way Brooke turned every practical question into a moral accusation. When I finished, Leah said, "She wants you scared to ask normal questions." "I don't want to be cruel," I said. "Then be accurate," Leah said. "There's a difference. I also don't want to look like some controlling husband who starts tracking every receipt." "Charlie," she said, "if your wife is telling people you're financially abusive before you've even had a conversation about finances, you need documentation, not guilt." I hated that she was right. I hated even more that the word documentation made the marriage sound like something already dead enough to need a file. The next morning, Brooke made coffee like everything was normal. She moved around the kitchen in leggings and one of my old sweatshirts, hair clipped up messily, looking like the woman I had shared a life with. For a few seconds I let myself imagine I had misunderstood everything. Then she set her mug down and said, "I booked us with a mediator." I blinked. "You what?" "I think we need structure. A mature separation. No drama." "Mature separation," I repeated. She looked relieved, like I had finally said the right line in a scene she had already rehearsed. "Temporary. 60 days. Space for both of us to think clearly." "You booked a mediator before talking to me about separating?" "I tried to talk to you," she said. "You kept making it unsafe." There was that word again. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask about Adrian. I had the strange sense that any emotion I showed would be picked up and labeled before it even reached the air. "When is it?" I asked. "Next Thursday at 10. I'll send the details." She did more than send details. That afternoon, while I was sitting in the driveway with the engine off and the garage door still opening in front of me, my phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. I attached a temporary separation agreement. "Please read it with an open heart. I'm trying to keep this peaceful. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." The attachment looked professional enough to make my stomach drop. It had headings, numbered paragraphs, and calm phrases like mutual cooling off period and shared financial stability. But the actual terms were not calm. I was supposed to leave the house for 60 days. I was supposed to keep the mortgage auto pay active. I was supposed to keep paying the utilities. I was supposed to maintain car insurance and all current vehicle-related expenses, including the car Brooke primarily drove. I was supposed to give at least 24 hours notice before coming by the house. I was supposed to respect Brooke's healing process by not involving family or mutual friends until she felt emotionally prepared. There was nothing about Adrian. Nothing about who would be in the house while I was gone. Nothing about the spare key she had once given Paige for emergencies and later claimed she had misplaced. Nothing about the resort deposit. Nothing about why Paige had already been told I might use money as punishment. I sat there in the driveway with the headlights painting the garage wall, thinking, she already wrote my exit. She just needed my signature on it. Brooke came out into the garage 10 minutes later, holding a tote bag like she was leaving for yoga or errands. She looked at me through the windshield and made a little motion with her hand, like I was blocking her. I got out. "Did you read it?" she asked. I started. "You don't have to decide right this second," she said, but her tone said she expected me to. "I'm not signing anything without advice." Her expression changed fast, then smoothed out faster. "Advice from who?" "Someone who understands agreements." "Charlie." She sighed like I had disappointed her again. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "What part?" "The escalation. The distrust. I'm asking for space, and you're turning it into a legal battle. You sent me a legal document." "It's not a legal document. It's a framework. It has signature lines." She looked away. "I'm trying to protect both of us." I wanted to ask from what? I wanted to ask why protecting both of us meant only one of us leaving, only one of us paying, and only one of us staying quiet. Instead, I said, "Send me the mediator's name and the expense list by email." Her face went colder. "Wow. So we're doing cold now. We're doing clear." She went very still at that. For the first time in months, she seemed less hurt than irritated. After she left, I called Grant. Grant has been my best friend long enough to know when I'm talking too calmly. I explained everything from my car with the garage door still open, because walking into the house suddenly felt like stepping into a staged room. When I finished, he said, "Do not send her a paragraph." I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. In your head, it would sound reasonable. On her phone, it would become Exhibit A of you being unstable. I rubbed my eyes. So what do? Save it. Date it. Write it down. Ask for written terms. Don't accuse without proof. Don't touch money blindly. Don't touch her phone. Don't follow anybody. Don't give her the messy version of you she's clearly waiting for. That sounds like a lot. Anger feels good for 5 minutes, Grant said. Documentation lasts longer. So that's what I did. I opened a note on my phone and titled it Timeline. I wrote down the date Brooke first said temporary separation. I wrote down Paige's message. I saved the agreement attachment. I took screenshots of Brooke's text sending it. I wrote down exactly what I remembered from our kitchen conversation. Not dramatic guesses, just words. Then I sent Brooke one text. Please email the mediation details, the full expense list you expect me to cover during the 60 days, and any proposed access rules for the house and vehicles. I'm not discussing property or money verbally anymore. She replied 4 minutes later. This is financially aggressive, Charlie. I typed 3 different answers and deleted all of them. Then I wrote, put any property or expense issue in writing. She did not answer. The next 2 days were strange. Brooke moved around the house like I had already agreed to disappear. She staged 2 moving boxes in the hallway outside the guest room, even though they stayed empty. She left mail on the counter from a forwarding service, then snatched it up when I looked at it too long. One envelope had the start date printed clearly through the little window. It was dated 4 days before she told me about mediation. That went into the timeline too. The mortgage auto-pay reminder came through that same week. Normally I would have clicked it, confirmed the amount, and moved on. This time I just stared at the email. The house was not an abstraction. It was our shared asset, our credit, our biggest financial tie. I knew I couldn't stop paying things recklessly just because I was hurt, but I also knew Brooke was banking on that exact restraint. I reviewed the accounts that night, not to blow anything up, to separate what was legitimate from what had become an open faucet. Mortgage. I kept it scheduled because my name was on it, and I wasn't damaging my own credit to make a point. Basic utilities? Same. Car insurance? I checked who was authorized to drive which vehicle and requested the policy details in writing. Streaming account in my name? Password changed. Membership tied to my card that Brooke had used for reset weekends. Cancelled. Vacation reservation under my name for the solo reset weekend? I called the resort, confirmed it was booked using my account credentials and card, and canceled it before the deadline. The confirmation email was polite and boring. I saved it like it was gold. I also disputed one card charge after calling the bank and asking what documentation they needed. I didn't say, my wife is cheating. I said there were charges tied to a reservation I did not authorize, and I wanted the process handled properly. The representative asked careful questions. I answered only what I knew. Then the home security app gave me the clip that changed suspicion into certainty. The notification was from a Tuesday afternoon, one of the afternoons Brooke had asked me not to come by because she needed quiet. I was going through old clips because the garage keypad log showed a code entry I didn't recognize. I clicked the camera view expecting maybe a delivery person or Brooke carrying one of the staged boxes. Adrian walked in through the garage. Not knocked. Not rang. Walked in. He used the keypad like he had done it before. He wore a dark jacket, jeans, and the relaxed expression of a man entering a place he believed he had permission to enter. He carried nothing. No boxes. No tools. Nothing. He left 3 hours and 14 minutes later, still carrying nothing. I watched the clip twice. Then I sat back in my chair and felt something colder than anger settle behind my ribs. I texted Brooke a screenshot from the clip, not the video itself. Who gave Adrian the garage code? She called immediately. I let it ring. Then she texted, "Are you watching me now?" I replied, "The security system on the house logged an entry. Who gave him the code? He was helping me carry stuff. He entered empty-handed and left empty-handed 3 hours later. You are proving every concern I've had about privacy. Who gave him the code?" No answer. A minute later, she wrote, "I'm not doing this by text." I replied, Then I'll note that you declined to answer in writing. That was when the call started. 3 in a row. Then a voicemail. Her voice was tight. Charlie, you need to stop acting like a prosecutor. You are making this ugly because you can't control me. Adrian is not the issue. Your reaction is the issue. I saved the voicemail and wrote a note afterward describing the call attempts. I did not record calls. I did not need to. Brooke was leaving enough in writing because she assumed I was too trained by guilt to use it. The message preview happened the next morning. Brooke was in the kitchen packing a tote bag. There was a half-eaten banana on a napkin, her keys beside the sink, and her phone on the counter near the toaster. I was making coffee because habit is stupid and strong. We were barely speaking, but I still made enough for 2 mugs before remembering not to pour hers. Her phone lit up. I did not touch it. I did not unlock it. I did not lean over and scroll. It was face up, and the preview appeared bright and sharp. Adrian. Once he signs and leaves, he can't just walk back and like it's still his home. I froze. Another preview appeared before the screen went dark. Adrian, don't worry. He'll keep paying. You said he cares too much about looking like the good guy. The kitchen got very quiet. The coffee machine clicked and hissed. Brooke reached for her phone a second later and must have seen my face, because she tucked it into her tote without looking at the screen. What? She said. I looked at her. Really looked. 12 years of shared bills, shared beds, shared emergencies, shared quiet mornings. And here she was, not asking for air, not asking for healing, not even asking to leave honestly. She was trying to turn my decency into a payment plan. Nothing, I said. Her eyes narrowed. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Acting calm when you're punishing me inside. I picked up my coffee. Send the mediator details. She left without answering. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether I was being unfair. I called Grant from the driveway. He listened while I described the message previews. Then he said, do not mention that yet. She left it sitting right there. Doesn't matter. Do not turn this into a fight about her phone. Build the record around things you're allowed to discuss. The agreement, access to the house, garage logs, expenses, reservations, what she told people. You make it sound like I'm planning a lawsuit. I'm planning for you not to get buried by her version of events, Grant said. There's a difference. Leah was less calm when I told her. She wants you gone, quiet, and paying, she said. That is not space. That is a setup. I know. Do you? Because you still sound like you're deciding whether refusing makes you mean. I didn't answer. Leah softened, but only a little. Charlie, being fair does not mean being stupid. That sentence became something I repeated to myself every time Brooke tried to make me feel cruel for asking for clarity. I contacted an attorney for a consultation. Not because I wanted to scorch the earth, but because I finally understood I was holding paperwork designed by someone who expected me to be too ashamed to read it carefully. The attorney told me what I already suspected but needed to hear in professional language. Do not sign temporary occupancy, support, or access terms without disclosure and legal review. Keep paying obligations that protected my own interests. Stop optional payments that had no legitimate shared purpose. Communicate in writing. Preserve records. Avoid threats. Avoid name-calling. Avoid dramatic social media. Do not voluntarily leave the home under vague terms that could be used later. I took notes until my hand cramped. That afternoon, I changed the garage code through the home security app. I did not lock Brooke out. She had her own access. I changed the shared temporary code, the one that should never have been given to Adrian. I also disabled an old guest code that had existed for years. Then I sent an email to Brooke. Effective today, shared temporary access codes have been changed. No person not listed on the mortgage, insurance, or authorized accounts may use property, access codes, vehicles, subscriptions, memberships, or reservations tied to me or to joint obligations without written agreement. Please return or identify all spare keys issued to any third party. I will discuss temporary arrangements at mediation after full disclosure. It was the most boring sentence I had ever enjoyed writing. Then I sent the same notice by certified mail because the attorney said boring proof was better than emotional truth nobody could verify. Brooke discovered the code change that evening. My phone rang 5 times while I was in the grocery store. I watched her name flash while standing in front of the pasta sauce, trying to remember what I had come in for. Then the voicemail transcription appeared. You had no right to embarrass me like this. Adrian was just dropping something off. You are being vindictive and financially abusive. Call me back like an adult. I bought sauce, bread, and a frozen dinner I didn't want. Then I went home and texted, put any property or expense issue in writing. She responded, you canceled the resort too? I stared at that. Then I typed, the reservation was under my name and payment account. It was not authorized by me. You knew I needed that weekend. It was booked under my name. You're punishing me for needing support. I'm not paying for a trip involving Adrian. The reply bubbles appeared for almost a full minute. Finally she wrote, this is why I couldn't tell you anything. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. The audacity had become almost mechanical. She had built a whole system where the truth itself was my fault for making her uncomfortable enough to hide it. Paige gave me the next piece without meaning to. She texted 2 days before mediation. I'm sorry if my first message came off harsh. Brooke told me you had already agreed to move out for a while, and she was scared you'd cut her off. I was just worried. I read it 3 times. Then I replied, what date did she tell you I had agreed to move out? Paige sent a screenshot of their earlier conversation, probably thinking it would calm things down. It did the opposite. Brooke had written to Paige, Charlie is going to step away from the house for 60 days. We're keeping bills stable, but I'm afraid he'll use money to punish me once it's real. I'm trying so hard to keep this peaceful. The date on Brooke's message was 2 days before she sent me the agreement, and 3 days before she told me she had booked mediation. I saved the screenshot. Then I wrote to Paige, she told you I had agreed before she ever asked me. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm correcting the claim that I plan to abandon the house or use money to control her. Paige called me, and for once I answered. Her voice was small. Charlie, I only knew what she told me. I get that. The dates don't line up with her story. No, I said. They don't. I should have asked you before assuming. I wasn't ready to absolve anyone, but Paige sounded embarrassed in a way that was real. So I said, just don't repeat her version as fact anymore. I won't. That mattered more than I expected. Not because Paige was the judge of my life, but because Brooke had already started building an audience. One person stepping back from the script meant the script wasn't airtight. Mediation was in a plain office that smelled like printer toner and coffee that had been sitting too long. There was a receptionist behind a glass window, a stack of intake forms on a clipboard, and a notary appointment scheduled in the same suite for after the session. I noticed the notary sign immediately because Brooke had mentioned, very casually, that it would be convenient to handle signatures the same day. Convenient for whom? I had started to wonder about everything. Brooke arrived 10 minutes after me. She looked polished in a cream sweater and dark pants, hair smooth, makeup soft, wedding ring still on. She carried a folder and gave me a tight smile that said we were performing civility now. Thank you for coming, she said. I live in the same marriage, I said. I was planning to show up. Her smile twitched. The mediator was a neutral woman with a calm voice and reading glasses. She kept pushing up the bridge of her nose. She explained the process. She said mediation was not court. She said the goal was temporary structure, voluntary agreement, and clarity. She said neither party should sign anything they did not understand. Brooke nodded through all of it like she had personally invented reasonableness. Then she slid her printed agreement forward. I'm trying to avoid ugliness, she said. I think Charlie can prove he respects my space by agreeing to a 60-day cooling-off period. I'm not asking for anything extreme. Just stability. He would continue the normal household expenses so neither of us is financially destabilized. The mediator looked at me. Charlie. I placed my own folder on the table. It was not huge. I had forced myself not to make it huge. Grant helped me cut it down to what mattered. A copy of Brooke's proposed agreement. My written response. A timeline with dates. The mortgage reminder. The car insurance authorization note. The resort cancellation confirmation. Paige's screenshot. The garage access log. Still images from the home security clip showing Adrian entering through the garage. A note that Brooke had declined to answer who gave him the code. The text asking for expense terms in writing. The mail forwarding notice date. I said, I'm not signing a trap just because it has a calm title. Brooke's head snapped toward me. Excuse me. I kept my voice flat. I'm not leaving the house for 60 days while continuing to pay expenses that benefit a person you gave access to the home before any separation terms existed. Her face flushed. This is exactly the kind of punitive framing I was worried about. The mediator raised a hand slightly. Let's slow down. What person? Adrian, I said. Brooke's eyes hardened. He is not part of this. He used the garage code to enter the house during a time Brooke asked me not to come by, I said. The agreement does not disclose that a third party had access, might continue to have access, or might use property and utilities I'm being asked to pay for while I'm restricted from entering without notice. The mediator looked at Brooke. Is there a third party with access to the home? Brooke exhaled sharply. A friend helped me move some things. Charlie is making it sound like something it's not. I slid forward the still images. He entered empty-handed and left empty-handed over 3 hours later. I'm not arguing morality right now. I'm addressing access and expenses. That line helped me. It kept me from saying what I wanted to say. The mediator reviewed the images, but did not comment emotionally. Access needs to be disclosed and addressed directly in any temporary agreement. Brooke leaned forward. This is privacy invasion. He's using cameras to monitor me. The security system logs access to the shared home, I said. You asked me to leave that home and keep paying for it while limiting my access. Who enters matters. Brooke turned to the mediator. You see what I mean? This is control. The mediator stayed neutral. Use of the home by either party or invited guests is a practical term. It is not unusual to discuss it. Brooke's mouth opened, then closed. I moved to the next page. Brooke told Paige I had already agreed to move out before Brooke ever presented me with this agreement. I slid the screenshot forward. That matters because one of my concerns is that this document is being used to create a record that my absence was voluntary and already decided. Brooke said, Paige had no right to send you private messages. I looked at her. You pulled Paige into the story before telling me the terms. I was scared. You were preparing witnesses. That is disgusting. What's disgusting is telling people I agreed to abandon the house before asking me to leave it. The mediator glanced down at the dates. Brooke, was this message sent before Charlie received the proposed agreement? Brooke stared at the page. Brooke, the mediator said. I was emotionally preparing, Brooke said. The phrase sat in the room like fog. The mediator wrote something in her notes. I said, there's also a resort reservation booked under my name and payment account for a date marked as a solo reset. There are rideshare charges and account charges that don't align with the explanations I was given. I'm not asking the mediator to adjudicate fault. I'm saying I won't agree to pay open-ended expenses without disclosure of who is using what. Brooke's voice sharpened. So now you're punishing me financially. No. I kept the mortgage and core utilities current because those protect both of us. I stopped optional payments tied to unauthorized use of my accounts. I also changed shared temporary access codes after they were given to someone not listed on the mortgage, insurance, or accounts. You had no right. It's my home too. The mediator looked between us and said, this agreement needs more disclosure before either of you should rely on it. I would not recommend signing it today, as written. Brooke went still. That was the first time I saw real panic. Not hurt. Not disappointment. Panic. The notary appointment was suddenly irrelevant. The polished folder was suddenly just paper. The calm title could not hide the missing facts anymore. Brooke turned to me, voice low. You're making this uglier than it had to be. I said, you wanted an adult separation. Adults put things in writing. You're trying to humiliate me. No, I said. I'm refusing to finance the story you planned without me. The mediator paused the session. She said we both needed separate legal review before any temporary terms could move forward. She gave procedural next steps in a voice that did not blame either of us. I appreciated that. I did not need her to be on my side. I needed her not to let Brooke's version become reality just because it was printed first. In the parking lot, Brooke followed me to my car. Charlie, she said, and for once her voice sounded less polished. Stop. Just stop. I turned. You're spiraling, she said. This is a confusing emotional period, and you're turning it into war. I looked at her hands. No folder now. Just keys gripped too tightly. You turned my trust into a payment plan, I said. Her eyes filled with tears, fast and convincing. Maybe even real. I was lonely. I believe you were unhappy. Then why are you doing this? Because being unhappy doesn't give you the right to move another man into the edges of my life while billing me for the center. She flinched. He didn't move in. I didn't say he did. I said you gave him access and built paperwork around my absence. She wiped under one eye. You're overreacting to one hard season. The hard season isn't the deepest betrayal, I said. Trying to make me finance my replacement and call it maturity is. She stared at me like I had slapped her. I got in my car and left. That afternoon, I sent one short evidence summary. Not a public post. Not a group blast. Not a rant. Only to Paige, Leah, Grant, and two mutual friends Brooke had already contacted with claims that I was using money and the house to control her. The message said, I am not asking anyone to take sides. I am correcting the claim that I abandoned Brooke or used money to control her. Brooke's proposed 60-day agreement required me to leave the home while continuing major expenses and limiting my access. Before I received it, Brooke told others I had already agreed to move out. A third party, Adrian, had been given garage access before any separation terms existed. I have kept legitimate shared obligations current and stopped optional charges or access tied to my accounts. Attached is the timeline with dates and supporting records. Then I attached the short version. Dates, screenshots, access log, reservation cancellation, Paige's own message. No insults. No speculation about what happened in private. Nothing about the phone preview because Grant was right. I did not need it. The documented facts were enough. Brooke called 8 times within an hour. I did not answer. Her texts came in bursts. You had no right to send that. You're trying to isolate me. You're making everyone think I'm some horrible person. You know the full story is more complicated. This is abusive. I replied once. I'm not refusing responsibility. I'm refusing your rewrite. Put legal or financial issues in writing. She sent a paragraph after that. I didn't read it until later. When I did, it was exactly what I expected. I was cold. I was punitive. I had forced her to seek emotional support. I was using paperwork as punishment. I had never understood her. The funny thing about paperwork is that it does not care what tone someone uses to describe it. Dates are dates. Access logs are access logs. Signature lines are signature lines. Paige called me the next day. I compared the dates, she said. The dates don't line up with her story. I know. She told me you had agreed. She made it sound like you were already halfway out the door, and she was begging you not to burn everything down. That was the point. There was a pause. I should have asked you before assuming. You already said that. I know. I'm saying it again because I mean it. I believed her. Not fully, maybe, but enough. The fallout with Adrian was quieter, but more satisfying than any public confrontation would have been. I found out from Brooke because she could not resist telling on herself when angry. After mediation, Adrian apparently tried to use the garage code and couldn't. He texted Brooke asking if I had changed everything. She told him it was temporary. Then the resort reservation cancellation hit. Then the streaming account locked him out too, which I only knew because Brooke sent me a furious message saying, "Was it necessary to humiliate me over TV?" I stared at that one for a while. TV, the house, the car, the utilities, the resort, the account access, the story she had told our friends, and she wanted to reduce it to TV because that sounded petty enough to make me look small. I answered, accounts solely in my name are no longer available for third-party use. She wrote, "You're enjoying this." I wasn't. That surprised me. I thought revenge would feel hotter. Instead, it felt like cleaning spoiled food out of a fridge. Gross, necessary, and overdue. Adrian sent me one message from a number I did not have saved. Brooke said you two had an arrangement. I don't want to be dragged into legal stuff. I looked at it while standing in the laundry room, the dryer thumping behind me with towels Brooke had left in there for 2 days. I replied, "Do not use my property, accounts, access codes, vehicles, or reservations. Any further issue can go through attorneys." He did not answer. Brooke did, 20 minutes later. "You contacted Adrian?" "He contacted me. He's upset." That sounds like a Brooke problem. It was petty enough that I almost regretted sending it. Almost. Adrian's attitude changed fast after that. Brooke had sold him a version of her life where the house was basically hers. The bills were handled. The car was available. The trip was booked, and the husband was too concerned with being decent to object. Once access disappeared and expenses became real, Adrian became careful. I know because Brooke left one printed page on the counter by accident, or maybe because part of her wanted me to see it and react. It was a text thread she had printed for her own records, probably planning to show I was escalating. The part visible at the top was from Adrian. You said he already agreed to move out. Brooke had replied. It was supposed to be handled. I took a photo of the page because it was sitting in the open with other mediation documents. Then I put it back exactly where it was. It was supposed to be handled. That sentence told me everything about the life she had promised him. The formal separation process moved slower after that. Slower than Brooke wanted and slower than I wanted, honestly. There were attorney emails. There were account statements. There were arguments about who could use which car and when. There were temporary payment arrangements that made me unhappy but did not make me stupid. I paid what I was responsible for. I refused what was optional. I stopped explaining the same boundary in 5 different emotional languages just because Brooke disliked the plain version. Her favorite new phrase became financial aggression. When I kept the mortgage current but refused to pay for her separate membership account, I was financially aggressive. When I asked for written confirmation that Adrian would not drive a vehicle listed on our insurance, I was financially aggressive. When I would not restore the streaming account password, I was financially aggressive. When I asked that any spare keys given to third parties be returned or documented, I was financially aggressive. One afternoon she texted, "A decent husband wouldn't nickel and dime the woman he claims to love." I typed back, "A decent separation doesn't hide who benefits from the expenses." Then I put the phone face down and went for a walk. Leah came over a lot during those weeks. She didn't storm in saying, "I told you so," although I could tell she wanted to. She brought food I pretended not to need. She sat on the floor in the living room and sorted old mail with me because Brooke had let piles of it build up in drawers and baskets. She made labels for folders: mortgage, insurance, utilities, taxes, mediation, attorney. At one point she found an old birthday card Brooke had written me 6 years earlier. It had a joke inside about us being boring in the best way. Leah held it for a second, then asked, "Do you want this?" I took it. Then I set it in a separate box. Not because I wanted Brooke back. Because I didn't want to pretend none of it had been real. That was one of the harder parts. People wanted the story to be clean. Villain, victim, ending. But a 12-year marriage is not clean just because the ending is ugly. There were years when Brooke loved me. There were years when I loved her without fear. There were ordinary Tuesdays that mattered. There were grocery lists and vacations, and inside jokes, and bills paid late, and bills paid early, and nights we fell asleep holding hands without thinking about it. The fact that she betrayed me did not erase those years. It did change what I owed her going forward. Grant understood that better than most. He came by one evening with takeout, and sat at the kitchen table while I read another email from Brooke accusing me of weaponizing clarity. He took a bite of noodles and said, "That phrase is almost impressive. I'm tired." "Of course you are. I thought I'd feel more righteous." Righteous people make bad legal decisions. I looked at him. He shrugged. "You don't need to feel righteous. You just need to stay clean." A few days later, one of the mutual friends I had included in the summary text called me. His name was Matt. He had been more Brooke's friend than mine for the past few years, mostly because she kept up with people better than I did. "I'm not calling to get involved," he said, which is what people say when they are already involved. "Okay. I just wanted you to know Brooke told us you cut her off." "I didn't. I saw your timeline." "Then you know I didn't." He sighed. "Yeah, I know. I just don't think she understands how bad it looks." "She understands," I said. "She just thought I wouldn't show anyone." That was the part that kept ringing in my head. Brooke did not think I was stupid. She thought I was predictable. She thought I would absorb humiliation privately, keep paying publicly, and argue emotionally enough that she could point at my pain instead of her plan. She knew I cared about being fair. She used that as leverage. Once the legal process got more formal, Brooke's tone changed again. The polished therapy language slipped more often. Panic made her direct. "You're ruining my stability," she texted one night. I answered, "I'm protecting mine. You promised you'd never abandon me." "I didn't abandon you. I refused to sign myself out of my own home under false terms. You know what people will think." "I know what you told them to think." No response. The divorce conversation started as a threat from her. "If this is how you're going to be, maybe we should just divorce." I read that message in the quiet of the guest room, where I had started sleeping because the primary bedroom felt like a museum of someone else's marriage. A month earlier, the word divorce would have knocked the air out of me. That night, I felt tired sadness, but not panic. I replied, I agree that we should move toward a formal divorce process. She called immediately. I did not answer. Her voicemail was half crying, half anger. So that's it. You get your documents and your little timeline, and you just throw 12 years away. I was confused, Charlie. I was scared. I needed support. You turned one hard season into a war. I wrote down the time of the voicemail. Then I sent one text. Divorce and separation logistics in writing only. The next morning, she emailed me a long message with the subject line, "Please be human." I almost opened it before coffee. I knew that would ruin my whole day, so I waited until after breakfast. It was 6 paragraphs of blame folded carefully around 2 sentences of almost accountability. She admitted Adrian had been emotionally present when I had not. She admitted giving him the garage code was not ideal. She admitted she may have moved too quickly with the separation agreement. Then she pivoted back to me. My coldness, my records, my refusal to talk like partners, my financial aggression, my humiliation of her in front of friends. At the end, she wrote, "I made mistakes, but you chose revenge." I forwarded it to my attorney and did not reply directly. The attorney sent a measured response that said future communication should remain focused on property, accounts, temporary support, and access. It was crisp, dull, and perfect. That became the rhythm. Brooke tried to pull things back into emotion when paperwork did not favor her. I kept sending them back to logistics. I didn't always feel calm. Sometimes I would stand in the shower with my hands against the tile and shake with anger so intense I scared myself. Sometimes I would sit in the driveway longer than necessary because going inside meant facing the life she had tried to hand over in pieces. Sometimes I missed her so suddenly that it made me feel stupid. But I did not hand her that version of me. The temporary separation eventually became a formal legal separation while the divorce moved forward. The final terms were not magical. I lost money. Of course I did. Divorce after 12 years is not a movie where the wronged spouse walks away untouched and triumphant. There were shared obligations, equity questions, insurance issues, vehicle arrangements, and attorney fees that made me physically wince when I saw the invoices. But I did not leave under her trap. I did not sign a 60-day agreement that made my absence look voluntary while another man used the life I was funding. I did not let her tell everyone I abandoned her without correction. I did not keep paying for optional conveniences because she found a prettier name for guilt. Paige apologized again after the first formal hearing. She sent a message that said, "I'm sorry. I was wrong to accept her version without asking for yours. I don't expect that to fix anything, but I wanted to say it clearly." I replied, "Thank you." That was all. I didn't need a friendship repair ceremony. I needed the lie to stop traveling. Adrian disappeared from the story almost as soon as it became inconvenient. He did not ride in as Brooke's brave rescuer. He did not stand beside her through paperwork, attorney emails, or the reality of paying for things himself. From what little I heard, he told her he didn't want to be the reason her divorce got complicated, which was a funny way to describe benefiting from the complication until the invoices arrived. Brooke tried to tell me that proved he was never serious and that I had destroyed something she needed. I answered through email, "Adrian's choices are not my responsibility." She replied, "You have become so cold." Maybe I had. Or maybe I had just stopped heating the whole house while she opened the doors for someone else. Months later, after the divorce filing was underway and temporary orders were in place, Brooke asked to meet in person for closure. She said she didn't want attorneys and emails to be the last language of our marriage. I thought about it. I really did. There was a part of me that wanted one final conversation where she looked me in the eye and admitted exactly what she had done. Not just the affair. Not just Adrian. The plan. The way she had seeded the story with Paige. The way she had expected me to keep paying because I cared about looking decent. The way she had tried to turn my home into a place I needed permission to enter while my money still lived there freely. But wanting closure from the person who created the wound is a good way to keep handing them the knife. So I replied through my attorney. "Charlie declines an in-person meeting. Please direct any remaining issues through counsel." Brooke sent one final personal email anyway. "I hope someday you understand that I was trying to survive." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I wrote a reply I never sent. "You were trying to leave with the house, the bills paid, another man waiting, and a witness list ready. That is not survival. That is strategy." I deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, Because she already knew. The final settlement came months after the first mediation. It was not satisfying in the dramatic sense. There was no courtroom gasp, no judge scolding Brooke, no single moment where everyone stood and applauded the timeline. Real life rarely gives you that. It gives you PDF attachments, certified mail, signatures, and a weird hollow feeling when the thing you fought for is finally over. My attorney emailed, "The decree has been entered." I read it sitting at the same kitchen table where Brooke had once told me counseling wouldn't work unless I stopped needing control. The house was quieter by then. Some furniture was gone. The fridge had only my notes on it now. Trash pickup, insurance call, buy coffee. The garage keypad worked on the first try because I finally replaced the sticky button instead of just pressing it twice out of habit. I made 1 cup of coffee. For months, I had still sometimes made too much. Muscle memory. Marriage memory. That morning I measured enough for 1 mug, watched it brew, and felt something settle. Not happiness exactly. Not victory. More like I had stopped carrying a box someone else kept refilling. Leah came by that evening with dinner. Grant came later with a 6-pack he forgot I didn't really drink anymore. So he drank 1 and left the rest in my fridge. We ate off paper plates because most of the good dishes had been split, and nobody made a speech. At one point Leah raised her water bottle and said, "To being accurate." Grant nodded. "And staying clean." I smiled for real. A week after the decree, Paige texted that Brooke was telling people the divorce happened because I chose paperwork over love. Paige said she corrected it gently and then stepped away from the conversation. I thanked her and did not ask for details. That was new for me. Before, I would have wanted to know every sentence, every person, every version of the story. I would have wanted to defend myself against rooms I wasn't in. But at some point, protecting your peace means accepting that people who want the lie will keep polishing it no matter how clean your timeline is. Brooke's last message came through the attorneys because there were still small property issues left. She wanted me to approve one final reimbursement tied to something that was not included in the settlement. The email said she hoped I could be human about it and not punish her forever. My attorney asked if I wanted to respond. I did. Charlie will comply with the decree and documented obligations. He will not cover additional optional expenses. Brooke responded directly to me, ignoring counsel. "You really became this person over one mistake?" I looked at that message while standing by the fridge, one hand on the door, cold air spilling out the way it had months earlier when I first asked about Adrian. For once, I answered directly. It was not one mistake. The affair was one choice. Giving him access was another. Telling people I agreed to leave before asking me was another. Asking me to pay while making myself absent was another. I'm done funding the version where those are all my reaction. She typed for a long time. Then she wrote, "I hope it was worth it." I did not reply, because by then I understood something Brooke had counted on me never learning. Calm is not the same as surrender. Fairness is not the same as financing your own replacement. Privacy is not a shield for fraud dressed up as healing. And being a decent man does not require you to keep paying rent on a lie. I didn't blow up my marriage. I stopped signing receipts for the life Brooke planned without me. She wanted me out of the house and still on the hook. I chose the one thing she never expected. The paperwork. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.